Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a great weekend. I want to start with thanking Delegate and Vanessa for inviting us to be a part of this festival and also being able to, talk about such an important topic. This festival is such a great initiative to encourage people to discover so many green and small businesses, and we're incredibly grateful to be here. So I'm representing Eat, Roam, Live and Nourish, and we will talk a little bit more about what we do at Eat, Roam, Live. But before that, let's get right into the talk and talk about how what we eat matters, especially how it impacts the environment. This is a really difficult topic to talk about, which is why I'm going to try and make it sound a little more optimistic. For the purpose of this talk, we'll be focusing on the consumption of animal products and how that impacts the environment, the planet, and contributes to climate change. Since we've lost some time, I'm gonna try and be a little quicker. So as we know, this is not a new topic. We've been talking about the climate crisis, climate change, environmental pollution for a very long time now. And when we do that, we usually talk about the usual suspects. We've heard so many other talks already today about plastic, fossil fuels, the systemic pollution that comes from uncontrolled industrialization, etc. And even though in that list you often see agriculture feature, but it's never really deconstructed as to what aspect of agriculture is impacting the environment the most. It's also because there is this view that we all have to eat and we have to feed the growing millions. So it's kind of inevitable, the pollution that is caused by agriculture. It's only a lot more recently, maybe in the last 5 or 10 years, that we're talking about our individual choices of what we put on our plates and how that impacts the environment. Some of you may disagree with me, say that it has always been talked about in some sense or the other. But if you just think about it, almost everybody knows when they hear of plastic or they hear of, transportation, fumes that come from that, burning coal, industrial waste, immediately the thought is that these things have a negative impact on the environment. But when you think about your next meal, a juicy piece of steak or eggs, your feelings or your first thoughts are not about the environment. They're mostly positive feelings. So it's not as omnipresent as it is with other pollutants. We don't talk so openly about food. Why is that? So food is actually an incredibly sensitive topic, and that's why it's taken so long and things have gotten to this stage before we have started talking about it, because it is a very sensitive subject. It's deeply rooted in tradition, in culture. It's a huge part of our identity, where we come from. It doesn't just provide us sustenance and nutrition. It also gives us a lot of happiness. It also brings us together. Unlike other species, we do not just consume food for survival. Eating food is a social activity. It's in fact the most common and most popular social activity that we do as a species together. It often also defines how well we live, right? It kind of shaped by our personalities of how, where, what we eat. It is also representative of who we are as people. And that's why it's such a difficult topic to engage with. And possibly that's why it's taken so long for environmentalists to talk about, so seriously talk about the impact of our food choices, especially of animal products. Because animal products have been a very integral part of our food systems for very, very long. I remember growing up in India, even though you think of India as a majority vegetarian country, a lot of us who eat meat, or when we did go out to eat, we still ate vegetarian food at home, but when we went out to eat, the agenda was to eat as many animal products as possible, food laden with dairy and meat, because that's when you could justify its expenditure, because it was always an occasion and a celebration. an indulgence. So, and when you went out or met people who ate vegetarian food, you always made fun of them because you said, oh, why are you eating ghas phus, which literally translates to grass and hay. Because you think that that's a waste of like time and money to come to a restaurant to just eat ghas phus. But even that narrative in India in those socioeconomic groups is changing. So it's not to say that food shouldn't be a source of joy, of comfort, of camaraderie. What I'm trying to say is that food traditions have always changed, have always evolved. And if we've not always eaten this way, and we will not in the future either, and we can't continue to eat like this in the future. The way we eat has changed so much over the years, over decades, over centuries. If from us being hunter gatherers to now living in a world where food is truly completely globalized. Sitting here in Singapore, we can eat food from any part of the world and it's at our fingertips. And that had to reach that point from when we were hunting game and eating fruit to then when we settled down and started doing some agriculture, started consuming more grains, foods that we could store, to where we are today. Food traditions have evolved. And even though it's amazing that we have so many options, I think for those of us who have access to these options, it's also time that we start recognizing that a lot of our choices are not sustainable and not good for the planet. And if we keep consuming the way that we currently do, our planet is going to take a hit in a way that we may not be able to recover from it. And I know that sounds really pessimistic, but some researchers actually say that it's already too late. So from that point of view, I still would like to be a little more optimistic to say that there is hope, there are things we can do. Of course, changing what we eat is not the only thing, but it is a significant thing that we can individually, as individuals, make a difference to. So now coming to how much impact does the food we eat have? Of course, there is an entirely different conversation around the ethics of eating animal products and the cruelty in factory farming. And that's another conversation that I really like to have. But for the purpose of this talk, we're going to talk about sustainability, sustainability of our planet, of the people that inhabit it today, you and me, but also those people who will inhabit it in the future, our future generations. So for the health of the planet and of all the people of today and the future, there is enough and more reason to start eating less animal products, as little as possible, and more plant products. Some of you may already know this, but animal agriculture is actually responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than all of the transport sector combined. This includes your cars, your trucks, your trains, your airplanes, and the methane that is released, especially from cattle farming. And yes, I'm talking about cow burps, because cows belch as they eat, and that's what produces a lot of methane. Another huge part is the carbon dioxide that comes from cutting the rainforests. And people would say the rainforests are cut to grow crops, but a lot of those crops are actually grown as fodder for these animals. So it's actually a really long process for that food to reach your plate. You grow food, you feed that to animals over months and years, and then eventually it ends up on your plate as a small piece of meat. And a lot of forests are also for animals to be able to graze. Although unfortunately, very few animals actually get to graze in the natural environment now. They're all kept in very, very inefficient, unsustainable, unsanitary factory farms. So all in all, just artificially breeding, caring for, if I may say so, feeding animals takes up a lot of energy, from the food that we have to feed them, from water, to the this energy that takes to sustain them, and all the waste that they create that needs to be taken care of. It ends up contributing to different forms of pollution. And I mean, think about it. We are less than 7.7 billion people in the world, and almost 10 times billion animals, land animals, I'm not even going into marine animals, are slaughtered every year. And that's, like I said, 10 times the human population. Can you just imagine how much energy that takes to produce, and how much pollution that ends up creating? So greenhouse gases that we talked about are of course incredibly deadly, but those are not the only things that are contributing to the environment's decline. It's also the health factor, which ends up not just impacting us individually, but as a society, and ends up impacting the planet. To grow animals faster and bigger, antibiotics and hormones are pumped into them. It's because the demand for animal products is so high that this is the only sustainable way to grow them if we want to feed the demand. And going forward, that's going to become even harder. So where do these antibiotics land up? They land up in our bodies. And from our bodies, or from the animals' bodies, they end up in our water systems, in our river bodies. Recently, I'd seen a documentary where they actually took a water sample from Thames River in London, and they actually found so many antibiotics in it, because these are medicines that we are either directly taking to cure our health issues, which also we are put at a higher risk of because of eating animal products: diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancer. Animal products can contribute to all of these. And then on a global scale, it ends up fostering deadly viruses, such as now. Like, there's no better time to talk about this than now. We are in a global pandemic situation, and we know that it has come from a pig farm or a poultry farm, and that's how the virus has spread. And of course, eventually, because of all this pollution, it ends up harming our wildlife, our habitat, species, dead ocean zones, etc. I want to talk about two major areas besides just the pollution caused air pollution and the land pollution. One is water use. So the water footprint of, you can just see in this graphic, it's very, like, it hits you. It tells you how many liters of water is required to create 1 kilogram of the said food product. So for a kilogram of beef, you need 15,415 liters of water, compared to vegetables where you only need 332. So overall, you need 20 times more fresh water to produce animal products compared to the same weight of plant products. So it ends up being a huge, huge strain on our water resources, and ends up compromising our water security. And this kind of really tells on how we think of saving water and conserving water, because ever since we were children, we were told to save water, don't keep the tap running, don't waste water, don't have long showers, and all of those things. And those are great things to do. I'm not saying anyone should stop doing those things, but what we don't realize is the indirect use of our water per household. 90% of it is from the food that we eat. So we don't see it when we eat our meat or our glass of milk or even grains. We don't see the water that has gone into producing that. That's when 90% of our per household water is going. So not running the tap while you're brushing your teeth is not going to have as much of an impact if we start compared to if we start eating more plant-based products. So, you can take your 1 hour long shower, just eat more plants. That's what I say. The other aspect that I want to talk about, and it's a statistic that always hits me in the face, is that 800 million people are starving right now. They're suffering from chronic hunger. And we are, 7.6 billion people on the world. And just in terms of food crops that we grow, and I'm not talking about the quality of these crops and whether they are completely fit for human consumption, because currently they're not, a huge part of it is not grown for human consumption. Not to say that it cannot be, but as of now it isn't. But just talking in terms of quantity, we grow enough food to feed 10 billion people, and yet 800 million of us are starving. And this number is projected to go up to 2 million. So what's essentially happening is that all that crop that is being grown is being fed to animals instead of feeding the people who are hungry, who don't get enough food on a daily basis. And then over months and years, that animal is reared for dairy or meat, etc. And then it ends up on our plate indirectly. So all those crops are actually you are actually, as a meat eater, as an animal products eater, you're actually consuming more plant products as well, because the animal that you're eating has eaten before it landed on your plate. One disclaimer I want to give here is that there are, of course, a lot of socioeconomic political factors that contribute to global hunger and starvation, and those are also significant. But I'm not here to talk about that. So I'm not discounting that, but that's not relevant for this talk. So we actually, talking about food trends and the way we choose to eat food today, there are two almost contradictory trends that we see. First one is the more obvious trend that we think of is that the way, as we are prospering and as affluence is increasing, we're seeing systemically the rise for the demand for animal products. Because like I gave you the example of myself, like when we went out to eat, we wanted to eat animal products. So now that we can afford more animal products on a regular basis, especially in countries in Asia, developing countries as they are becoming more developed, the demand for meat, dairy, eggs is increasing. And this is what is happening as naturally we evolve. But because what this is doing is that this is actually putting a lot more pressure on our land to produce more soybeans, produce more corn, which is to be fed to that livestock so that we can get that meat. So this is the global statistic that scares us a little bit. But I also want to talk about the positive side, and I want to focus on that a little bit longer, is that there is a trend that you see for plant-based products. It's incremental, the way the demand for plant-based products is increasing. People are realizing the harmful effects of animal agriculture on the environment and the harmful impact of animal products on their bodies. And they're choosing to eat more local, more plant-based, and more clean. So the question now is, what do we do? Do we all turn vegan overnight? In my books, that's the ultimate goal, but it's not for everyone immediately, because given the cultural, political situation of the world, you can't expect indigenous people and certain socioeconomic groups to go vegan overnight. These changes are not that easy to make for every group of people. But for people like you and I, people tuning in right now, there are so many changes we can make. And we have the privilege, we have the access, we have the convenience to so many alternatives that we can make changes. If you heard the talk at 10, I think it was, Rachel was talking about how systemic changes are a lot more important than individual actions, and that actually ends up having a more strong impact. And I agree with that. I completely agree that, you know, choosing to not use a plastic straw actually gives us more personal satisfaction than it actually ends up impacting the environment positively. Not to say that you should use plastic straws, but small individual actions like taking public transport and instead of taking a cab, or using steel straw, those things will take a very long time if only individuals make these changes. But when it comes to food, the demand and supply works very differently. It works much faster. Just looking at the growth statistics of vegan products, especially during this pandemic, you can see how rapidly people are choosing. And this is a great way you can tell the governments, you can tell businesses that we do not want to eat these products that are not good for our health, that are not good for our environment. And those changes can be seen a lot more rapidly. So in my opinion, if there are individual actions that you can take that can actually end up having a huge impact, it's choosing to eat more plant-based products. Just by reducing your meat intake by half, you can impact the biodiversity positively by 30%, because that will automatically reduce livestock production. So, of course, in conclusion, what we eat does matter. I'm not saying that all vegans are incredibly sustainable and they make only eco choices. There are other things that you can do in terms of food choices to make the most optimal sustainable choices. It's also important to eat more local foods, cleaner foods, more fresh foods. That ends up also supporting your local farmers, and believe it or not, it reduces how much money you spend and reduces your grocery bills. So I have not purposely quoted any studies and findings, because there are so many of them out there, and one little Google search will show you that most of these studies that have been done in the last couple of years will show that a large diet is the most suitable for both human health and the health of the environment. And that's precisely why, and that's the mission we're on, and that's why we decided to create Nourish. Nourish is a fully vegan e-marketplace, and not only are all our products vegan, they're also mostly by small businesses. They're also mostly healthy and clean products. So we hope that when you have the choice, when you have the access, you're going to make the right choices. And with that, I'd like to end this chat. If anyone has a question for me at this point, you can ask, and I'll be happy to answer those. If you have any questions about Nourish or Eat From Live, I'd also be happy to answer those. You can also find us at in the Food and Beverage Hall at the festival, and you can shop some amazing products. Okay, there's a question here. Wanted to ask, what is your view on the government policies? Are you talking specifically about Singapore government? Just clarifying. No, okay, generally. So I think governments, again, like I said, mostly talk about the systemic aspects of in the environment. You don't see government policies promoting plant-based foods. I think the reason is the same, is that people are scared or afraid to talk about things that are part of traditions and religions and culture, and telling people that you can't eat this thing that generations of your families, of your heritage have been eating, is a little tricky. So the government shies away from talking about this, and the way they talk about it is a little different. They won't directly tell you to just stop eating what you eat. So the government policies are more around fossil fuels, or they'll be more around plastic, and that's what they like to focus on, because it's easy to get buy-in from people. Although if there were more government policies about the food choices, I feel like the changes would be a lot more rapid, because the thing you hear, people still say that it's my personal choice to eat what I want. But if the government starts telling you that it's not your personal choice anymore, it's impacting the environment, it's impacting animals and health, people will take it more seriously. But I do think it's going to be a long time before governments can directly talk about food and animal products in their policies. I'm not very optimistic about this coming into the fold. Any other questions at this point? I completely agree. That's why I said that it's not possible for everybody to turn vegan. I'm not saying that tomorrow instantly everybody should turn vegan. The markets will crash, and there are people in certain communities that don't have access to plant products based on where they live, based on their economies. It's not easy, but there can be just the same way we have policies around plastic or transportation or using sustainable products, we can have certain policies around this as well. Because, I mean, think about it, like there are things that replace in terms of technology. When television came in, it replaced radio, it replaced other things. It's not like radio, people who made the radio went didn't have a job the next day and didn't know what to do, and then the economy crashed because suddenly there was television. There are newer jobs that come in, and that does get transferred and that does shift. Of course, it has to happen gradually, but I don't think that if there is a strong step taken by the government, that people will just be out of jobs, and farmers will be out of jobs. There will be jobs created for them to work in the fields that replace those products. And yes, the vegan scene has evolved and it will continue to evolve, hopefully. Please go check out our booth and have a great time at the festival. And thank you for listening to me. And I hope you got some good insights. Thank you.